Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have certified public accountant, CPA, Scott Abels of Precision CFO Solutions Incorporated. And Scott is calling in all the way from Austin, Texas. Great city. Scott has a wealth of experience as a CFO consultant and financial executive, and is with us today to break down and discuss some of the financial implications of divorce for business owners. Now, this is a very unique topic. We've not had somebody speak specifically to business owners. So if you are a business owner out there who's unfortunately in the position of going through a divorce, this is the time to have ears wide open, sit back, relax, and have a listen to what Scott has to say. So, with that said, let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hello, Stuart. Thank you for having me on the show today. It's a pleasure.
You're so welcome, Scott, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and speak with our listeners today. So, Scott, let's just jump feet first into the water. The temperature's nice and cool. Briefly explain in your own words, Scott, who do you serve and the kinds of situations that they find themselves in when they come to you for help?
Certainly. So I serve clients who are obviously going through a divorce, and they either own a privately held business or a share of a privately held business. And usually these clients come to me when they're in the middle of a divorce and they need to value all of their assets. And frequently that business is, our business interest is one of the biggest assets they have, if not the biggest one. And they come to me when they need help assigning a value to that asset so that they can then divide it equitably in a divorce.
With that said then, Scott, can you briefly share some of the most common misconceptions surrounding the topic of the financial implications of divorce for those business owners out there?
Stuart, one of the most common misconceptions that clients have is that they can do this on their own and save money by doing it on their own. And after all, how hard can it be? Because they know this business better than anybody else. As I frequently tell prospective clients, though, if you were having a medical procedure done, for instance, an important medical procedure, you wouldn't try to do this yourself or have a friend or family member do it. And you probably wouldn't do it based on shopping for the lowest cost. You'd probably want somebody who's done this over and over again, who's very skilled at it, and who you know is going to do a good job. And it's much the same when you're valuing a business interest in a divorce. It's a complex issue, and it's probably one of the largest issues that most of my clients will ever deal with. So it makes sense to get someone who knows what they're doing.
Based on what you just shared with us, and obviously keeping client confidentiality in mind, can you share an example of how you've helped someone who came to you with those challenges you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them, please?
Certainly. I can think of a recent example, Stuart, of a doctor who owns 50% of a medical practice. And initially, he thought that he could get his soon-to-be ex-spouse to agree with him on what the value of that business interest was. Well, as you might guess, though, people who are getting a divorce are already at odds with each other, and they weren't able to come to an agreement at all. So eventually, the doctor came to me when he realized that he wasn't going to be able to do it on his own. We used our expertise in Texas family law and also in business valuation, and we were able to identify a substantial amount of personal goodwill that was in his business. Now, what is significant about personal goodwill is that it's not divisible in a divorce in the state of Texas. Or in other words, it's not, you don't have to split it with your spouse. It's personal to the owner. The difference to our client was several $100,000 that he did not have to split with his spouse because, according to the law, it was personal to him. So this is just one example, and I've seen this many times, just one example where if the client had done it themselves, he would have never known this, and he would have left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table.
So in that case, it was very good that this client came to you for your advice and your expertise in that area, because that would have cost him a lot of money, right?
Exactly. And he ended up saving a lot of money by employing us to help him do this. So initially he thought it was just an added cost to go get a valuation expert. But in reality, a valuation expert will oftentimes pay for themselves many, many times over.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with us, Scott. So today we're breaking down some of the financial implications of divorce for those kind of business owners that you just mentioned, that doctor, that former client of yours. So with that in mind then, Scott, for those business owners who are currently considering their options, what's the most common but unknown pitfall you'd like them to be aware of?
I would say that a common pitfall that business owners have in valuing their business is they try to use what we call rules of thumb or stock formulas to determine the value of their business. A rule of thumb is a ballpark estimate for an average business in a given industry that you can apply to your business to get an idea of what the value is. So, for example, a rule of thumb for a retail business might be that the value of the business is equal to 50% of annual sales or 3 times sellers' discretionary earnings. These rules of thumb are based on broad averages for each industry. But the problem is that most businesses are not average. And when you use a rule of thumb, you're assuming that your business is average. Now, for instance, if your business is more profitable than average, then using a rule of thumb is going to result in a value that's too low. And conversely, if your business is less profitable than the average, then you're going to end up with a rule of thumb value that's too high. Rules of thumb also fail to take into account specific strengths or weaknesses of the particular business. And this is why, Stewart, rules of thumb are not typically used in divorce or in other types of litigation situations. So I tell my clients to think of it this way. Rules of thumb are meant to get you in the right zip code, but a business valuation will pinpoint the exact spot where you're standing.
So, Scott, so far we've spoken about some of the misconceptions that are out there surrounding some of the financial implications of divorce for business owners. And you just touched on one of the most common pitfalls that you come across on a day-to-day basis. So with that said, I'm sure for a listener who's tuning in right now, they want to know a little bit more about Scott Abels. Who is he? I mean, we've seen him online. His picture looks great. He looks like the American version of James Bond. He sounds like the American version of James Bond. But who is Scott Abels? So in your own words then, Scott, could you briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and especially in terms of your background and your education and your experience as it relates to the topic of divorce, finances, and especially for business owners?
Well, Stewart, actually, I prefer to think of myself as James Bond, as you've made me out to be there. But in reality, I am a CPA, as you mentioned, and I spent 25 years as a financial executive working at a couple of large publicly traded companies. And that's where I got a really strong background in how to run a successful business. And that's kind of what gave me my solid foundation for understanding how businesses work and what makes them valuable. For the last 6 years, I've owned Precision Valuation Services and Precision CFO Solutions, and I have probably valued close to 100 businesses, I would say, during that time. I'm also a certified valuation analyst, or a CVA, and this is a valuation credential that requires additional extensive training and testing and continuing education. Essentially, it's a CPA for business valuation. And I've also completed extensive training in Texas family law, including classes at the University of Texas Law School. So for anyone who finds themselves in this situation, it's important not only to have someone who has a background in understanding business valuation preferably a strong business background, but they also need to know the law of your individual state very well. It's important to do that. So you may know a lot about businesses and how they run, but if you don't know what the law is in regards to divorce in this case, then you can really lead clients in the wrong way. All of these things go together to kind of give me the unique perspective I have on business valuation, my business background, as well as my training in law and my training in business valuation science.
Scott, I'd like you to picture the kind of business owner who comes to you for help and wants to know more about the financial implications of divorce. Now, with that picture in mind then, Scott, what final thoughts would you like to leave that person who's listening to you right now?
I would say get an experienced, credentialed valuation professional to help you if you're in that situation. Most divorce attorneys can help you find an experienced valuator in your area, and make sure that person knows the laws of your state. Initially, it may seem like an unneeded expense to do that, but a good valuation professional can save you lots of money and will pay for himself many times over.
Excellent. So if there is a business owner who feels they want to dig a little bit deeper into this topic and find out more about some of the financial implications of divorce, how can they connect with you, Scott?
There's 3 ways that they can easily connect with me, Stewart. One is to go to my website, which is Precision CFO Solutions.com. And that's all one word, Precision CFO Solutions. The second way is to find me on LinkedIn. And my last name is spelled Abels. So Scott Abels. You can just look me up on LinkedIn. The third way would be to call me directly at area code 512-673-3530. Those are 3 easy ways to connect with me, and I would be happy to speak with anyone or answer any questions.
Okay, so whether you're at home or you're listening in on your personal device, that's all we have time for today. That was Scott Abels. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Scott. You certainly have demonstrated that you're a true educator and advocate for the business owners who you serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're so welcome, Scott. And I'd also like to add a big thank you to you, the listener. Thank you for joining us on this insightful and informative conversation with one of the top certified public accountants in the Austin, Texas area. Scott, you certainly have proven that you are a true educator and advocate for the success of your clients. So thank you once again. Make sure you do check out Scott, check out his website that he just shared with us, give him a call, send him an email. I'm sure you're going to be on the right track if you do that. With that said, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.